My sister tried to sabotage my wedding rehearsal performance, so I made sure she'd never forget her own humiliation. I'm the older sister, 29F, and she's the younger golden child, 26F. Let's call her Sarah. Our parents have always favored her. She was the pretty one, the talented one, the one who could do no wrong. I was the responsible one, which in my family meant I was expected to be perfect while getting half the praise Sarah got for breathing. Sarah has always had this need to be the center of attention. Birthday parties, family gatherings, Christmas morning. If the spotlight wasn't on her, she'd find a way to redirect it. Usually through tears, dramatic outbursts, or sudden emergencies that required everyone to focus on her. I learned early to just fade into the background and let her have her moments. It was easier than dealing with the fallout. But my wedding was supposed to be different. After 28 years of playing second fiddle, I was finally going to have my day. I'd been planning it for over a year, and everything was perfect. Small ceremony, just family and close friends, at a beautiful lakeside venue. I'd written my own vows, chosen every detail carefully, and most importantly to this story, I'd planned to sing a special song during the ceremony. Now, I need to be clear about something. I'm not a professional singer, but I'm not terrible either. I was in choir throughout high school and college, did some community theater, and I have a decent voice. Nothing spectacular, but good enough that when I told my fiancé, now husband, that I wanted to sing to him during our ceremony, he was genuinely excited about it. I'd chosen At Last, by Etta James. Classic, romantic, and well within my range. The rehearsal was on a Friday evening, and we'd invited everyone who was coming to the wedding. About 60 people total. Both sides of the family, the wedding party, plus significant others. I was nervous but excited. I'd been practicing the song for months, and even though it was just the rehearsal, I wanted to run through it with the microphone and sound system to make sure everything would go smoothly the next day. Sarah had flown in from across the country for the wedding. She'd been different since getting engaged to her boyfriend 6 months earlier. More competitive, more critical, constantly comparing her upcoming wedding to mine. She'd made several comments about how she was going to do things better, and how my choices were interesting, said in that tone that makes it clear she means the opposite. At the rehearsal, everything was going perfectly. The processional, the positioning, the timing. It all felt magical. Then came time for my song. I stepped up to the microphone, the music started, and I began to sing. I was maybe 30 seconds into the song when Sarah, who was sitting in the front row as my maid of honor, suddenly called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Oh honey, it's my lonely days are over, not my lonely nights are over." I stopped mid-verse. The music kept playing. 60 pairs of eyes were staring at me. I felt my face burning with embarrassment, but I tried to laugh it off and started the verse again from the beginning. Not even 20 seconds later. The tempo is a bit slow, don't you think?
Etta James sings it faster.
This time she was speaking to the wedding coordinator, but again, loud enough for everyone to hear. I managed to get through the next verse, but my confidence was shaken. My voice cracked slightly on a high note that I'd hit perfectly every time in practice. "Ooh, that was a tough note," Sarah announced to no one in particular, but somehow projecting her voice like she was on stage herself. By this point, people were starting to look uncomfortable.
My maid of honor, my best friend since college, siot Sarah de Adler.
My mom was making frantic, "shut up," gestures from her seat. But Sarah wasn't done. "You know," she said, standing up now, "I think the key might be too high for you. Should we ask them to lower it? I don't want you to strain your voice for tomorrow." That's when I broke.
Not cry ni sto angry for tears.
I handed the microphone to the wedding coordinator and said, as calmly as I could manage, "Let's just skip the song for now. We can figure it out tomorrow." The rest of the rehearsal was awkward as hell. People kept glancing between Sarah and me. During dinner afterward, multiple family members came up to tell me privately that they thought I sounded beautiful and that Sarah was out of line. My future mother-in-law, bless her heart, told me she was looking forward to hearing the song at the actual ceremony and that she was sure it would be perfect, unlike some people's manners. But the damage was done. I was so shaken by the public humiliation that I seriously considered cutting the song from the ceremony entirely. I spent half the night before my wedding practicing in the hotel room, my confidence completely shot. I did end up singing at the wedding, and it went beautifully. But every time I hit that note that cracked during rehearsal, I thought about Sarah's comment. Every time I reached the lyrics she'd corrected, I heard her voice. She'd managed to take something that was supposed to be a pure expression of love and joy and taint it with self-doubt and embarrassment. After the wedding, Sarah acted like nothing had happened. When people complimented my performance, she'd jump in with things like, "Oh yes, she did so much better than at rehearsal." Or, "I'm so glad she took my advice about the tempo." Always positioning herself as having contributed to the success. I was furious, but it was my wedding weekend, and I didn't want to cause drama. I figured I'd address it later, maybe in a private conversation where I could explain how hurt I was by her behavior. That conversation never happened because Sarah went right back to her life across the country, and every time I tried to bring it up over the phone, she'd deflect or minimize. "I was just trying to help," or "You're being too sensitive," or "I don't remember it that way." But I remembered. And I started paying attention. Over the next 2 years, I began to notice a pattern I'd somehow missed before. Every time someone else was having a moment, a promotion, an anniversary, a birthday, Sarah found a way to insert herself or diminish it. She'd announce her own news at other people's celebrations, help in ways that actually hindered, or find small ways to undermine people when they were vulnerable. She did it to our cousin at her college graduation party, loudly questioning whether her degree would actually help her get a job. She did it to our mom at her 50th birthday, announcing her engagement right before Mom's speech. She did it constantly, and I'd never fully recognized it because I'd been trained since childhood to accept that Sarah's needs came first. But after my wedding rehearsal, I couldn't unsee it anymore. The opportunity for revenge came when Sarah announced she was pregnant. She was over the moon, posting about it constantly, planning an elaborate baby shower, basically making it her full-time job to be pregnant. Which, fine. First pregnancies are exciting, and she had every right to be happy. The baby shower was going to be huge. She'd invited about 80 people and was having it at an upscale event venue. She'd planned games, hired a photographer, registered for gifts that cost more than my monthly rent. It was less a baby shower and more a Sarah appreciation festival. She asked me to give a toast. "As the big sister," she said, "I'd love for you to say something about how excited you are to be an aunt." I agreed because, despite everything, I was genuinely excited about the baby. But I was also starting to form a plan. I spent weeks preparing. I researched.
Y called relatives.
I dug through social media posts going back years. And what I found was a pattern of lies and exaggerations that Sarah had been telling about herself and, more importantly, about me. See, Sarah had been presenting herself to her new in-laws and her husband's social circle as the successful sister. The one who had always been the star, the achiever, the favored daughter. Meanwhile, I was portrayed as the struggling older sister who had always been jealous of her success. This was fascinating because the reality was almost exactly the opposite. I had graduated valedictorian from high school while Sarah barely passed. I had gotten into my first choice college on academic scholarship, while Sarah had to go to community college first. I had a stable career and owned my own home while Sarah was still figuring out what she wanted to do professionally. But Sarah had been rewriting history, and apparently, she'd been doing it for years. The real kicker was when I found out that she'd been telling people that she had helped me with my wedding song because I was too nervous to perform alone. According to her version of events, she had basically coached me through the rehearsal and the performance, and I should have thanked her publicly for her help. That's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. The baby shower was beautiful. Sarah looked radiant in her perfectly coordinated pink maternity dress. She'd seated me at the head table, right next to her mother-in-law, who was apparently very excited to finally meet the other sister she'd heard so much about. When it came time for toasts, I was introduced as Sarah's big sister, who's so excited to share some memories and tell us all how proud she is of Sarah. I stood up with my champagne glass, sparkling cider for the pregnant ladies, and smiled warmly at the crowd. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Sarah and baby-to-be," I began. "I'm so honored to be able to share some thoughts about my little sister on this special day." I paused and looked directly at Sarah, who was beaming. You know, Sarah has always been memorable. Even as kids, she had this incredible ability to make an impression on people. Take her singing, for example.
Sarah's smile flickered slightly.
She'd never mentioned being able to sing to her in-laws. I remember when we were teenagers, Sarah was convinced she was going to be the next American Idol. She practiced constantly. In the shower, in her room, in the car. She was dedicated. She even auditioned for the school talent show 3 years in a row. I looked around the room. People were smiling, enjoying what they thought was a sweet sibling memory. Now, Sarah never actually got selected for the talent show, but that didn't stop her from believing in her abilities. In fact, just 2 years ago at my wedding rehearsal, she was so confident in her musical knowledge that she actually stopped my performance mid-song to correct me. In front of all 60 guests.
The room got quiet.
Sarah's face was starting to change. She corrected my lyrics, loudly, even though I was singing them correctly. She critiqued my tempo, criticized my key choice, and pointed out every tiny imperfection in my voice. All while I was trying to practice the song I'd written for my husband. I took a sip of my drink and continued, my voice still warm and conversational. But that's just Sarah. She's always been so helpful. Like when she announced her engagement at our mother's 50th birthday party, right before Mom's speech. Or when she questioned our cousin Jenny's career choices at Jenny's graduation party. Sarah just can't help herself when she sees someone else having a moment. She has to jump in and make it better. By now, you could hear a pin drop. Sarah was staring at me with a look of growing horror. Her mother-in-law was looking back and forth between us with obvious confusion. And the best part is, Sarah never remembers these moments the same way everyone else does. Like, I'm sure if you asked her about my wedding rehearsal, she'd tell you she was just trying to help her nervous big sister. She might even say she basically coached me through the performance. I turned to look at Sarah's mother-in-law. Has she told you that story, Mrs. Patterson? About how she helped me with my wedding song because I was too nervous to perform alone. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly, clearly uncomfortable but unable to look away. That's so interesting, I continued, because I have the video from that night. Would you like to see it? The color drained from Sarah's face. Oh wait, I said, as if just remembering something. I should probably mention that I've been taking voice lessons since I was 12, performed in choir and theater all through school, and actually considered majoring in music performance. While Sarah. I paused thoughtfully. Well, Sarah got asked to mouth the words during high school choir concerts because her voice was throwing off the other altos. At this point, Sarah tried to interrupt. Okay, I think that's enough. But I wasn't done. I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm almost finished. I just want to make sure everyone knows how proud I am of you. Like, it takes real talent to convince people that you're the successful sister when you're still paying off community college loans while your struggling sister owns her own home. It takes creativity to present yourself as the family star when you barely graduated high school while your sister was valedictorian. And it takes genuine commitment to maintain a lie for years, even when everyone who is actually there knows the truth.
I raised my glass.
So here's to Sarah, who has always been exactly who she is, regardless of what story she's telling about herself this week. May your baby inherit your father's honesty and your mother-in-law's good sense.
I sat down to complete silence.
Sarah was crying, not the pretty kind of crying, but the blotchy, hyperventilating kind. Her husband looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Her mother-in-law was staring at her with a look that suggested a lot of previous conversations were suddenly making sense. My mom was glaring at me, but my dad was trying not to smile. Sarah stood up and ran out of the room. About half the guests followed her, trying to offer comfort. The other half stayed in their seats, clearly unsure what the protocol was for this situation. Her husband came over to me and quietly asked if what I'd said was true. I told him that I had videos, photos, social media posts, and about 20 family members who could verify every single thing I'd mentioned. He thanked me and left. The party pretty much ended after that. People made their excuses and filtered out, leaving behind a table full of unopened gifts and a very expensive cake that no one felt like eating. I got a lot of angry texts from family members that night. Sarah had apparently called everyone, sobbing about how I'd ruined her baby shower, and lied about her in front of her in-laws. My mom demanded I apologize. Several aunts and uncles said I'd gone too far. But I also got some interesting calls. My cousin Jenny called to thank me and said she'd been waiting years for someone to call out Sarah's behavior. Two of Sarah's college friends reached out to say they'd suspected she'd been lying about various things but hadn't wanted to cause drama. And most surprisingly, Sarah's husband's sister called me to say that my toast had explained a lot of things that hadn't been adding up about Sarah's stories. The aftermath was predictably messy. Sarah demanded I be uninvited from family events. She told everyone I was jealous and vindictive and had always been mean to her. She claimed I'd made everything up because I couldn't stand to see her happy. But here's the thing about having receipts. They're really hard to argue with. When Sarah claimed I'd lied about the wedding rehearsal incident, I posted the video in our family group chat. When she said I was exaggerating about her academic struggles, I shared her high school transcripts, with permission from our parents, who were tired of her lies. When she insisted she'd never announced her engagement at Mom's birthday party, 3 different relatives posted their own photos and videos from that night. Slowly, the family narrative began to shift. People started sharing their own stories about times Sarah had undermined them or stolen their thunder. They talked about walking on eggshells around her, always making sure she felt special so she wouldn't cause drama. The most validating moment came when my mom called me 6 months later to apologize. She said she'd been thinking about everything I'd said and realized that she'd been enabling Sarah's behavior for years because it was easier than dealing with her tantrums. She admitted that she'd often asked me to be the bigger person or let Sarah have this one, because she knew I wouldn't throw a fit if I didn't get my way. Sarah had her baby, a beautiful little girl who I hope grows up to be nothing like her mother. She moved even further away and basically cut contact with most of the family. The few updates we get come through her husband, who seems like a decent guy stuck in an impossible situation. I don't regret what I did. For 28 years, I let Sarah get away with making me small so she could feel big. I let her rewrite history, steal credit, and undermine my moments because I'd been trained to believe that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for myself. But she crossed a line at my wedding rehearsal. She took something sacred, me singing to the man I love, and turned it into a public humiliation. She did it deliberately, knowing it would hurt me, because she couldn't stand to let me have one day that wasn't about her. So yes, I destroyed her baby shower. I did it with facts, with witnesses, and with years of pent-up rage at being gaslit and manipulated by someone who was supposed to love me. Some people say I should have handled it privately. That I should have been the bigger person. That I should have considered the baby and not made waves during her pregnancy. To those people I say, I was the bigger person for 28 years, and it got me nothing but more abuse. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to publicly expose them. Sometimes being kind enables cruelty. And sometimes, when someone spends years making you feel small, the only appropriate response is to remind them, and everyone else, who you really are. Sarah thought she could rewrite our history, paint me as the lesser sister, and continue her pattern of undermining me without consequences. She thought wrong. I'm not proud of making a pregnant woman cry at her own baby shower. But I'm proud of finally standing up for myself. I'm proud of refusing to be gaslit anymore. And I'm proud of showing my family that I won't be their designated scapegoat any longer. The golden child's crown finally fell off, and everyone saw that it was made of fool's gold all along. Update. Since this post blew up, I've gotten a lot of questions about whether I think I went too far or if I have any regrets. Honestly? My only regret is that it took me so long to stand up for myself. A lot of people in the comments are saying I should have confronted Sarah privately first, but what they don't understand is that I tried. 4 years. Every time I brought up her behavior, she'd deflect, minimize, or outright deny it happened. She'd trained our family to see me as oversensitive, and herself as just trying to help. Private confrontation doesn't work with narcissists. They just gaslight you more effectively when there are no witnesses. As for going too far, she spent my wedding rehearsal publicly humiliating me in front of 60 people at what was supposed to be one of the most important moments of my life. She then spent 2 years lying about it and using it to make herself look better. I gave her exactly the same energy she gave me, just with better documentation. Some of you have asked if we'll ever reconcile. I honestly don't know. She'd have to acknowledge what she did and genuinely apologize, which seems unlikely given that she's currently telling people I'm having a mental health crisis, and that's why I attacked her. But for the first time in my life, I'm not walking on eggshells around her anymore. I'm not managing her emotions or protecting her from consequences.
I'm not shrinking myself so she can see brighter.
And that feels pretty good. Edit. Thank you for the gold and all the supportive comments. To everyone sharing their own stories about golden child siblings or family scapegoating. I see you, and you're not alone. Sometimes the family that loves you best is the one you choose for yourself.